In this part of the lesson, what we're going to be looking at is computing the square root. So the first thing we should do is simply dissect the words that we have here, square roots. And the first thing that you should think about when you hear the word square is, as I said before, a square. And when we find the square of a number, we are simply finding the area. The number that we are finding the square of, which is usually the height and width multiplied by each other, is what results in that area. So when you hear the root, what we are trying to find is these values that multiply by each other to be able to give you that area. So to find the square root, we are simply finding those values. Let's say, for example, that you are required to find the square root of a value such as 4. To find the square root of a value such as 4, what we would do is we would try to find out what two values multiplied by itself would give us that 4. And that answer is 2. If we have a square that has a height of 2 and a width of 2, sorry, that's a 2, we know that the area would result in 4. And the reason that it would result in 4 is because this number here multiplied by this number here gives you that 4. So this here is the root and this here is the square. So we get square's root. I hope that clears up what it is you're actually doing. So you may be seeing that I have two numbers here, that is positive 2 and a negative 2. This plus or minus symbol means there are two answers, one that is positive 2 and one that is negative 2. You are able to get a positive 4 from multiplying two negative numbers. And this is one of the rules that goes from previous up until now. I will explain it a little bit further when we do work later on. But basically, try and remember this for now. When you have the two of the same symbols, for example, if I have two pluses, I will get a plus. If I have two minuses, I will also get a plus. But if I have a plus and a minus, I'll get a minus. And if I have a minus and a plus, I will also get a minus. Alright? I usually draw these happy faces when I'm explaining it so that people would start thinking of the idea when one eye doesn't match the other, it's probably because you get a black eye or something, and literally these two faces are happy faces. So pluses, and I'll draw those in blue, pluses, and these here I will draw minuses. Alright, so once the symbol is the same, you'll get pluses, and once it's opposite, you'll get minuses. Now, what we will call this for is a perfect square. The reason we call it a perfect square, it's because when you find the square root of it, you're actually able to determine the value. So notice we were able to determine that the square root of 4 is simply 2. And there are quite a couple of perfect squares that you would know about, which is 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81 and 100, and literally it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on as you go along all the way up until 10. Alright, now these are what you would consider perfect squares. In other words, if I find the square root of this, I am able to get a whole number value. For example, if I find the square root of 9, I am able to get 3 multiplying by 3. This is the square. Let me put that in a different color. This is the square and this is its root. Alright. Other numbers such as, say for instance, between 1 and 4 is like the square root of 2 or the square root of 3. These values, you can't get a perfect result from it. You cannot get a whole number. So what you would have to do is simply put these in on a calculator to be able to solve it. You would see a symbol on your calculator that looks like this, a square root symbol, and then you type in the number that you want to find the square root of, for example 2, and then you press the equal sign and you will get your answer. Now the square root of 2 is considered to be an irrational number. And you should remember what an irrational number is because we did it in literally the previous lesson yesterday. Alright? And once you're able to understand that what the perfect squares are, you'd be able to use them later on. And as I said, you don't need to know how to go about calculating the square root of numbers without a calculator. So just get accustomed to using your calculator for it.